Today on Kraken's Garage, we're going to learn how to bleed and flush your brake system. Let's talk about that. Let's get cracking. Good moto morning, beautiful people. Welcome to Kraken's Garage. I'm your host, Eric, and on Kraken's Garage, we discuss all good things on 2 and 3 wheels as my chair collapses. And on today's episode, we are going to show you how to bleed and flush your brake system on your motorcycle. These principles are all the same. So some of you old dogs that have done this many times, maybe stick around, you might learn a few new tricks the way I do it. So we'll have one shout out at the end. I hope you stick around to find out who that is. Let's get to it. To flush your brake fluid, you need to buy a new can of brake fluid, and it comes in many different variants, .3, .4, .5, and 5.1. How you delineate which one you're going to use is be sure to check your owner's manual or your service manual, or it's written on the top of your brake reservoir, and I'll show a picture right up above. In this case, for my bike, I have a fresh bottle of .4 brake fluid. You don't need to buy the brand specific, whether it be Honda or Yamaha or BMW or Harley brake fluid. You can go to your local auto store and pick up whichever one is readily available. Some good indicators of when you need to flush your brake system is if your brakes feel spongy, soft, unresponsive, or they fade way too early, and that usually is a sign of air in your brake fluid lines or possibly just dirty fluid. 9 out of 10 bike manufacturers require that you do it every 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please do this every 2 years. It is critical as the brake fluid does corrode and erode over time. So if you have multiple bikes, I just do it once every other year, and I set it up so all of my bikes in the garage get it done at the exact same time and just knock it out. For my Harley riders, you might want to go over to SinisterClutch's channel, and he just recently, within the last couple of weeks, posted up a brake fluid change on his road glide, so be sure to check that one out. Man, he does a killer job, and just outstanding video and tutorial on how to do it on your Harley. My first recommendation is consult your service manual. If you don't have one for this bike, I will have it linked down below. It's in my Dropbox. You can download a soft copy and print it off, or just store it on your laptop or desktop to get the information you need. For the rest of you folks and different bikes out there, buy a service manual. It gives you all the torque settings and everything that you need to know, critical information to keep you safe and out of harm's way and have an enjoyable motorcycle owner experience. Now, brake fluid is hygroscopic, and what I mean by that is it absorbs moisture from the air. So after a year or two, I promise you there is water in your brake lines, even though you've never even cracked the seal on it. They make testers for it. SinisterClutch uses one in his tutorial video, but rest assured there is water in the brake lines of this bike at this time, and that's what we want to flush out. The main reason why you want water out of your brake lines is it will boil. As you're hitting your brakes repeatedly over and over time, especially in the twisties, it heats up the fluid tremendously. That's the whole design of the brake fluid, to keep from boiling. With water mixed in with it, it does boil and steam off, and thus you get air bubbles and spongy brakes quickly. When water is mixed with your brake fluid, it vaporizes and makes the ability of the fluid to be compressed, and that's what gives you that sponginess when you hit your brakes. Now, water in your brake fluid is also corrosive, so it'll start to eat away at all your fittings of that the brake fluid travels through as well. That's another critical reason why you need to do it every 2 years. Now, if you have air bubbles in your brake lines or system, air is compressible as well, and that leads to that sponginess when you hit your brakes as well. Now, I have a few simple tools and items here to get this job done. I've laid them all out, so it doesn't take very much. Basically, you need a 3/16 of an inch clear PVC line, vinyl hose. You need a wrench to loosen up the bleeder valve on your brakes. In my case, it's 8 millimeters for the Benelli. but it varies from bike to bike. You need brake fluid, .4, for which I have a new bottle right here. These two are old and been laying in the garage, and I'm gonna throw them in the trash because they have moisture in them just from being in the garage. As I mentioned before, printed on the lid of the brake reservoir, it states the correct DOT fluid. So for the Benelli TnT 135, it takes .4 brake fluid, as most bikes do. You will also need a container to house the old brake fluid and keep it contained so it doesn't splash out. Some people use a pop can or beer can or something like that. I'm not a fan of that because there's no real way to seal it up and you run the risk of spilling it even when you throw it out or just moving it around in your garage. Brake fluid is very, very corrosive, and it'll attack your paint, your powder coating, and any type of finish on your bike. It will attack it immediately. So we need paper towels and we need lots of rags. We're gonna have one other rag that I'm gonna take over to the sink, and I'm gonna soak it with water and wring it out a little bit, and we'll have it ready in case even a small drip falls on the bike anywhere. I can quickly get it off with some fresh water. You probably should use latex gloves, but it's not so corrosive that it's gonna be acidic to your hands. I guess left over time it would, but in this case, I'm not gonna use gloves, but wash your hands immediately after doing this task. A pro tip is you should start with your brakes that are furthest away from the actual brake reservoir. So if you have dual discs, then that would be on the right side if you're facing the bike because it's the furthest away from the master cylinder. So it has the longest way to travel to get the air out of it and also the old fluid out of it as well. This only has a single-sided brake, so we're gonna work from this side only today. Step 1, we're gonna remove the dust cover from the brake valve, bleeder valve on your brake system. It's listed on, it's bolted to your brake caliper. And we just pop that off like so. Step 2, we're gonna take a box end wrench. And what I mean by box is the one with the circle that's all the way around. What you don't want is the open end because it's just gonna fall off. So we'll put the box wrench on it like so. And we're only going to basically be turning this back and forth a quarter of a turn. Next, we're gonna hook our 3/16 line on. This is gonna be a very tight fit. And to make it a little easier, heat the end up with a hair dryer or a heat gun ever so lightly to soften up that vinyl, and it'll slip right on very easily. Now, pro tip, keep your hose kind of arced upwards like so. And I do that for a couple of different reasons. A, you can see the brake fluid come up. You can visually see the old versus the new. When the clear fluid starts to come up, you know it's been flushed. Second item is if by accident you happen to let go of the brake lever that we're going to keep pressure on, we'll discuss that in a minute, it will suck the brake fluid back into it. If you have it just tilted down into the drain bottle, it will suck air rather than the old fluid back into it and make the job a little tougher for you, if that makes sense. Step 4, we're gonna put the hose down into our container. In this case, I'm using this juice bottle. This is another pro tip. Get a knife and cut an X into the bottle like so. And then we can poke that hose right inside there through that X cut inside the bottle and then make sure that's sealed up. And then it'll drain down inside. And then when we're done with the job, I'll pull the hose out and we'll just put a piece of duct tape over that, and you won't get any spillage till you dispose of this leftover brake fluid. Step 5, lay towels or paper towels all over your surface areas that might get splashed during this process. And I have my soaked towel with water that I'm going to store right here in the case I drip something on the paint and we need to grab it quickly. Now we're going to need a Phillips screwdriver to remove the reservoir cap. You can turn your steering right or left to get this as level as possible, but in this case I think we're okay. Now here's a pro tip. If you own a Japanese bike, you must have a JIP Phillips screwdriver. It's actually not called a Phillips screwdriver, it's just called a JIP screwdriver. You can find these on Amazon for 10 to 12 bucks. It is a different crown than your standard Phillips. And that's why you see a lot of Japanese bikes. People never buy these, and the first screws that are stripped out on the bike are the reservoir on a regular basis. I'll have a link listed down below in case you own a Japanese bike if you need to buy one of those. And what we're gonna do is loosen this up and not remove the screws completely. And the cover should have a plastic piece right here. Then you should have a rubber gasket right here that you should pull out. Now before we start this process, what we're looking for is a nice full bowl in there. And if it isn't and it's super low, to start out, a pro tip is what I do is poke 2 holes. I don't completely remove the foil seal, and I poke 2 holes, one for air and one for pouring. In this case, it is topped off and it's fine, but that way it doesn't come gushing out. You can just very easily add a little bit at a time as needed. Now I've cleaned the rubber gasket that came off the brake reservoir, and I'm gonna put that back in the bowl up top and just set it in there. A, it doesn't let any particles float down into your brake, and B, when you're applying pressure, sometimes it will spray or spurt out brake fluid out of the top of it without that lid on it. Now I'm gonna squeeze the brake and pump it up, and then I'll hold that. Now while holding the pressure on that brake lever that has built up the pressure in the line, I'm gonna release the valve, and you can see the brake fluid starting to travel up. You can see air bubbles and gunk in it already. And we just keep repeating this process until we have clear brake fluid coming through with no air bubbles. I don't know if you can see it, I'll maybe have to zoom in the camera, but you can see the air bubbles coming up. Got quite a few. And the fluid is a little murky as well that's coming up. So we're getting there. You build that pressure up, open it up, close it, build the pressure up, open it up, close it. Don't take the bleeder hose off that we put on just yet. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's top it off. Every brake fluid reservoir should have a line. I'll take a picture with my camera so you can see it more clearly. And we will top it off there. So we'll replace our rubber gasket, and then we're gonna screw our reservoir cap back on. Which way does it go? All the lettering on it that tells you it's DOT4 and it's a warning sign should face as if you're sitting on the bike, and you can read it while you're sitting on the bike. Now sometimes when you're removing these screws, they can be tough to get out because you have steel screws and you have an aluminum housing that the reservoir is in, and water gets down around the sides of the screw, and it gets the screws, and it gets corrosive down by the threads. It makes it tough, rusts the screws out. So if you experience that, just spray some oil down in there and let it soak for a little bit before you start the whole procedure. Now with your wet rag, just kind of get some 409 or some sort of general purpose cleaner and wipe down all your surfaces that you were working on, as well as the paint and bike surfaces, so that if you didn't see some of the brake fluid get on something, it doesn't corrode and erode the beautiful finish of your bike. Now when we pull this hose off, we don't want to spray this fluid all over the place. So we're gonna pull it off, and then we're gonna lift it up, and whatever's left in the tube will travel down into the bottle. And that's part of the reason why I hook a loop up over above it. We got a little bit around there we gotta clean up. That's not a problem. Let's clean up that valve. Get all the residue off of it. And then snap the cap back over top for the dust cover. You repeat the same process for the rear brake. Instead of pulling a handle like your front brake, you're gonna push down on the rear brake to apply the pressure and then release your valve back here. Your reservoir is this very small cup right up here, where you also have a window where you can see you have the minimum and maximum amount for your brake fluid. Same process, very easy to do, and it'll save you another $100 bill from taking it to the dealership. I forgot to number some of the steps, so I'll put in a marker on each one of the steps with the description in the video. Hopefully you already saw that. One other footnote, if you have ABS, it's normally no big deal to flush the brake system. You're just gonna need more brake fluid because there's more plumbing to flush. The exception to that rule, and I don't know about other bikes, but on Harley Davidsons with ABS, it is mission critical you don't let an air bubble get in that system. If it does, you must take it to the dealer and they hook it up to their machine to flush that air bubble out. I have never been able to get the air bubble out on a Harley without taking it to the dealer, so you'll be out another $100-150 if you let air in the line bleeding your Harley with ABS. Something to think about. And you know what time it is. This week's shout out goes to NVARider. Mike has 387 subs. He has 99 videos out. He's rocking a 2020 Harley Davidson Road Glide Special. His motto is, he's just a guy on a Road Glide Special that wants to make some videos. As new parts come along, he will be sharing the install and thoughts about them along the way. Also, share some rides. He just recently relocated from Michigan to Texas, and his family is still transitioning out there. We all wish him well during that transition, and hopefully his family is getting out there sooner rather than later to Texas. And also kudos to Mike because he has riding year-round now versus riding in wintertime in Michigan. So you'll enjoy his channel. He is a very honest individual on his perspective on what he's reviewing and talking about, good, bad, or ugly. Very captivating man to listen to when he's doing reviews on stuff. If you want to go over and check him out, his Instagram and channel will be listed down below. If you like him and subscribe to him, please let him know Kraken sent you. And there's my ghost dog Bullet. He's here to remind me to wrap up this video. If you would like to become a Patreon, the link is listed down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you want to see more in the future, hit that subscribe button right down there in the corner. And remember, folks, go riding. It's good for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.